Game five, it's the stakes are a little higher because if you lose, your season is more embarrassing. You know what I mean? Hello and welcome to Baseball Barbacast, one of many baseball podcasts in the world that wants to give Orion Kerkering a hug. I'm Jake Mintz. That's Jordan Shusterman. And he just should have thrown it to first, man.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident Orion has probably received a healthy amount of hugs in the however amount of time since that very memorable and painful play unfolded at the end of NLDS Game 5 between the Phillies and Dodgers. We are recording this late on Thursday. Game 4. Game 5 is not to be. Game 4 between the Phillies and the Dodgers. We will talk about some Game 5s later on in this episode of Baseball Barbacast. But we must begin with our opener, and boy, is it painful.
Orion Kerkering threw home. He did not throw it to first. And not only did he throw home, his throw was very much off the mark. It was a very human moment. One that, unless you are on the Dodgers or a Dodgers fan or a Phillies hater, your response was not, yay, a walk-off. It was, oh no, oh God, poor guy. We love heroes and villains. The problem with this is there is no hero in this story. There is only the GOAT. And I don't mean the greatest of all time. There is only Orion Kerkering. Now, how much blame does he deserve? Probably not that much. He can't hit. And I can't remember the last time I watched a baseball moment that felt like I was being punched in the face. Like, this was so singular in that regard.
All right. So obviously what is part of the pain and disappointment and tragedy of this moment is that it was the conclusion of a truly beautiful, tremendous, competitive, close, tight baseball game. Now, ultimately, that buildup, which we will certainly recap between the Dodgers and Phillies, is contributed to it, because when we talk about a tense, close postseason game, especially once we get into extra innings and it's low scoring, you know that however anybody scores is going to feel like just this moment of relief and kind of exhale, but also, like, especially if it's a walk-off in the Dodgers case, you're wondering who the hero is going to be, but you're always painting it in that sense, right? And because this game was so well played, you're thinking about it more from the standpoint of who's going to step up and not who is going to necessarily fail. And so when this is how it ends, it sucks. It sucks. Now, the Dodgers certainly earned it by all accounts. I mean, they were the better team in this series.
Better team.
Yeah, and they were the better team in this game, ultimately, because they did enough to put themselves in position to have this moment happen. I mean, that's another, part of this last, the bottom of the 11th here. But I mean, obviously, because it was such a singular scenario, that is what is going to sustain.
If you watch people's reactions, and there were I already saw some reaction videos. I think the folks over at Baseball's Not Dead were live streaming, and you see Kirby and Dallas Braden, their physical recoiling of putting their hands on their head or over their face is so fundamentally different than when Freddie Freeman hit the walk-off homer in Game 1, last year, where if you were at a bar and that happened and you're a neutral, you would throw your arms into the air, right? Whereas for this, I don't know how you reacted. We were both watching with our respective wives, right? And it was just you wanted to turtle. You didn't want to explode.
Yeah.
And that's not to take anything away from the Dodgers. It is to take something away from Andy Pais, who after the game was treated like a hero, which we find to be hilarious. I have so many thoughts.
Put the ball in play, good things happen. I mean, that's true. You get credit for putting the ball in play, but it was very silly for him to get the the walk-off interview in every sense.
Yeah.
We need to describe exactly what happens, right?
Let's do the game.
We can get back to
Let's do the game.
Let's
do the game.
Let's do the game, and we'll build up to how we get to what actually occurred and what we are describing, which we assume 99% of people listening understand what we're talking about, but we will describe it more vividly as we recap the game. So go ahead.
If you're listening to this and you're like, what happened? Fascinated to meet you. Email us, baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. So this is a classic. We get Tyler Glasnow versus Christopher Sanchez. It is Tyler Glasnow's first postseason start for the Dodgers. He did pitch in Game 1 in relief. It is his first start since 2023 in the playoffs because he was injured for Los Angeles' run to the World Series last season. Christopher Sanchez bouncing back from his Game 1 start, where he was very good, pitched like one of the best players, best arms in the league, which he is. These guys just trading zeros. Just you take a 0, I'll take a 0. That all changes in the top of the 7th with a Nick Castellanos go-ahead double off of Emmett Sheehan, who came in to relieve Tyler Glasnow. I believe there was a runner on second. Castellanos laces one down the left field line, and the Phillies go ahead. In the bottom of the 7th, Sanchez gets into a little bit of trouble, and in comes Jhoan Duran in the 7th inning.
Well, I do want to back up, though, because I am now remembering that the way that the Phillies scored was because of an error by the Dodgers, a Dodgers pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
JT Realmuto led off with a single in the 7th, and Max Kepler grounded into what was going to be a 3-6-1 double play, which is a tough play for sure. Freddie throws to second. Mookie throws to Emmett Sheehan, who runs over to cover, and Sheehan just completely whiffs it, and the ball goes into the dugout. And because of that, Kepler is able to, I guess he doesn't get the full. Well, he does. He goes to second because the ball goes out of play. So then Max Kepler is in scoring position after grounding into almost a double play, and then Castellanos drives him in. And so at the time, because again, it's that close game, they showed that replay of Sheehan missing the ball over and over and over. Now, no one's going to remember that ever. We almost just completely skip past it. Like, truly, right? Like, if the Phillies win 1-0 and come back and win the series, that's a play we're seeing forever. But now that's totally lost history. So anyway, Jhoan Duran comes in very early.
Yeah, he comes in the 7th, bases loaded, 2 outs, and he walks Mookie Betts. The decision to intentionally walk Ohtani, before that, there was a base open. It was runners on second and third. And they opted to walk Ohtani to face Mookie, and he walks Mookie. Jordan and I, as fans of college baseball, particularly small school college baseball, if the two of us were ever to manage a team together, which will never happen, almost certainly, if we were ever to manage a team together, one of our core principles would be we do not ever intentionally walk the bases loaded, okay? Because in small school college baseball, guys will just walk that run in. And I know Jhoan Duran is not in the closer hierarchy a wild boy. He does not walk a lot of hitters.
No.
To me, and I know you trust the guy to get the guy out, whatever. Doesn't matter to me. It's just a vibes thing. I'd rather face Ohtani, who has been awful, than face Mookie with 2 outs in that spot. And it's kind of simple as that. Run scores on the walk, that ties the game. Then we get back to trading zeros. The Dodgers turn to Roki Sasaki, who throws 3 perfect innings, 9 up, 9 down. The image that I will remember from this game, besides Kerkering's hands on his knees and JT Realmuto pointing at first base, is Roki in the dugout with his glove on. This was wild. This is like sleeping with your shoes on the night before a marathon. I have never seen a player not remove their glove in the dugout. Maybe like a little leaguer who's really excited. But Roki Sasaki not taking his glove off in the dugout was absolutely hilarious.
And this was the story. I mean, this is the second biggest, most important part of this game. Not just from a how did the Dodgers win, although you could argue that is absolutely part of why the Dodgers won, is because Roki threw 3 perfect innings, and we were wondering how far would they stretch him in relief in any scenario now that he has settled into this closer role. And we got our answer, because he was so good and so efficient that he was able to cover 3 innings, get through the whole lineup, and make it look pretty easy. And that gets us, that's the 8th, 9th, and 10th. But again, the Dodgers are not exactly doing anything on offense either. After Duran kind of bounces back in the 8th and looks tremendous, then Strom comes in, he throws a perfect inning. Then Luzardo comes in. Okay, now we're in the crunch time of October, when we're going to Jesus Luzardo in the 10th. And we both did not feel good about that. Now, not that it was the wrong move. We just were like, uh-oh. But boy, did he look awesome. I mean, my goodness, does Luzardo show up in this game? And we know how it ultimately ends for him. He ends up, I guess, getting the loss, because he's the one that put the winning run on base. But Luzardo was awesome. But ultimately, the Dodgers, particularly, I guess it's Vesia, right, who comes in after.
Yeah, so let's do top 11.
11th. Yeah.
So top 11 is the Phillies' last chance, right? Vesia comes in to start that inning for Schwarber. That's when Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper hang out, is Schwarber. Schwarber, Harper, Bohm. He gets Schwarber to ground out. Harper walks. Bohm, who, let's just be clear, Bohm did not have a moment in the series. He was as locked in as I've ever seen him.
He was.
Right? He was taking a ton of pitches. He was walking a lot, smokes a ball to center field. Andy Pages runs it down. Okay? So now we have a runner on first and 2 outs. Wild pitch Vesia, Harper scampers to second. And Harrison Bader pinch hits. And this is there's a 10-pitch at bat between Bader and Vesia. And Bader is just swinging wildly outside of the zone, flailing a little bit like a madman, and eventually does chase on a ball, slider, down and away, swings through it, ends the inning. And that sends things to the bottom of the 11th. Luzardo comes out to start the 11th. Strikes out Freddie Freeman. Tommy Edmonds single. He gets a pinch runner, Hassan Kim. This is relevant because Kim can really scoop. Edmund has I believe an ankle issue that is preventing him from playing the outfield right now, which is why you have not seen Edmund in the outfield. Remember last year during their run, he was effectively the starting center fielder. Will Smith lines out to Max Kepler. 2 down. Max Muncy with a sneaky enormous at bat. Left on left single off of Luzardo that doesn't really hit it that hard, just kind of squeaks up the middle. That sends Kim to third. In comes Kerkering. Muncy, second on a defensive indifference, walks Kike Hernandez on a full count. And then up comes Andy Pages. And on the second pitch of that at bat, Pages chops a broken bat, to Kerkering, who does not field it cleanly. He then picks up the ball with his bare hand and with his feet in every which way, chucks it towards home, off the net. Kim scores. Game over. Season over, series over. Again, one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. One of the more memorable, singular postseason moments, which is unfortunate.
Absolutely.
And so let me get into this part of it, okay? I think the question is not, why did Orion Kerkering do that? If you're sitting here and you're like, what a dumb decision, I think you misunderstand how this stuff works, and you misunderstand high-level competition and decision-making and athletics even, right? Orion Kerkering in that moment is you're just so locked in. You're so focused. I've told the story on the show before, Jordan, and I understand the circumstances are very different. I finished my college career, right, hitting 2 batters on 2 pitches in a tie game in the bottom of the 10th inning of a regional. I was the best reliever on my team that year. I came in, I freaked out, I lost all control. I hit 2 guys on 2 pitches. I don't remember any of it. And the next thing you know, you're back in the dugout. And I don't know for sure, but I feel pretty good that a very similar thing happened to Orion Kerkering, right? So it's as simple as when he's on the mound, he's locked into pitching, right? He's not ever even really in that moment considering that he's ever going to have to be a defender. Now, maybe you could critique that aspect of it, whatever. And when he picks up the ball and he picks up his head and he sees Kim scampering home, I don't think it's like he forgot how many outs there were or like his positioning was wrong. This is not about poor fundamentals, this play, right? This is not about lack of preparation. This is not because Orion Kerkering didn't take his PFPs, his pitcher fielding practice, seriously enough in February. This is just your wires fritzing. And it's that simple. And it's sad and it sucks. And, maybe you could be more critical of him because he's a baseball player getting paid a lot of money to do this on a big stage. But like the feeling that I have right now is sympathy, right? More than it is like scorn or, I'm certainly not laughing at the kid. But does that anything what I said make sense?
Yeah, no, of course. And I think as we led off with it, I mean, as a human being watching it, understanding the context and any feeling for how that game could end, it sucks. Now, I will say that if we are going to be critical, to me, it's not about the play. It's about walking Kike Hernandez, right? And that at bat is why in some ways this happens. Now, okay, the easiest answer is just get Kike out and end the inning. You already have 2 outs. That's one thing. But because the bases are loaded, Kim's, running. He's going to go automatically. And just the bases loaded adds to the chaos of what you're feeling.
Of course. And I'm watching this Kike pitch right now. The 3-2 slider to Kike is not a competitive pitch, right? So just as a little tip for people that is just generally helpful when you're looking at like a take from a hitter when they don't swing, watch their hands, and the extent to which they move their hands or they don't move their hands will tell you like how fooled they were on a pitch. And Kike's hands, like he loads, but he really at no point looks like he's going to offer to swing at this pitch. And it's maybe about a foot like to the glove side of where this pitch is supposed to be. Like you're right. Like that to me is the bigger crime than throwing the ball away.
And I'm bringing that up also to kind of further emphasize your point about what he was probably feeling when he's coming into this game to begin with, which is also like, man, did they keep leaning on him, right? I mean, he pitched in all 4 games. He had some ups, he had some downs. This was true for the course of his season in general. And, they don't go to a David Robertson in this spot. Clearly, Robertson had kind of lost Thompson's trust. But if we're talking about experience and someone who's at least been in these moments a million times, maybe you argue it could have been him. But I think I just wanted to bring the reason we get to that point too, because it's 2 outs. The reminder is that this was not the first batter he faced. It did not come in and that was the first ball that he get. Like it was building more than that, and the walk had a lot to do with it. And that is where you could critique him as a pitcher. I think I agree with you. Focusing too much on like, what was he thinking? Why did he throw? It's like, well, because just think about how many things are going through a pitcher's head there. And it also makes you appreciate the pitchers that can handle those moments and all the pitchers that handled it in the innings leading up to this, right? If we're going to kind of appreciate the totality of this game in general, I think that's a big part of it as well. So it sucks for Kerkering though. And as we, say goodbye to the Phillies, it doesn't really change some of the sentiments and concepts that we talked about when you talked about the eulogy you wrote, even though their season was still going. It doesn't really change those things, but it does kind of give a very specific ending that almost makes it more of a sad ending than a mad ending. Is that a fair
totally
thing to
agree.
say too?
I was going to say I was literally going to say the same thing word for word. I think look, like Phillies fans are probably like mad at this guy. I had a Phillies fan texting me who will remain nameless who said he'll never bounce back from this and I'll never forgive him, which is like, that seems harsh and both like that's fandom, whatever, Sure. But I do agree with you that this is more of a cry than a yell. And look, like at the end of the day, this season is over for the Phillies, for the 2025 Phillies, because they didn't hit, right? If Pages floats one into center that touches grass or gets hit by a pitch or whatever.
Great point. Yeah.
Right now, when I understand that's not what happened, but if the run scores in a different way, if Kike hits a single, You're like,
Sure.
you're not like, man, Kerkering really screwed it up. It's
Right.
they lost 2-1 because the offense couldn't do it. And like that at the end of the day has been the story for these Phillies teams over the last couple of seasons, is that the guys at the top have not delivered. It is that simple. It sucks. I wish that wasn't the case. Today, Schwarber is 1 for 5 with the double. Turner is 0 for 5 with 2 Ks. And Harper is 0 for 4 with a walk. That's it. That's the season. Like, if they had won tonight anyway, that would have been amazing and impressive. But that's the it for me.
This is a very unfair way to say this, but again, when we do these late night pods, I'm just letting it rip. This is the team that was no hit in the World Series. And that was when things were going really well. And so since then, they have not been actually no hit again. However, it has remained a theme where these very talented, accomplished hitters, for whatever reason, for each individual one, there's different reasons. Some guys are chasing, some guys are whiffing, some guys are whatever. It just is not producing enough runs when they need them. And they're not the only team where this happens. Let's be clear. But because of how this arc has gone since they did get no hit in the World Series, because that felt like still the beginning of something. Now, because of the contract situations with Schwarber and just because of the aging and just the nature of the beast, as you wrote after game 2, are we facing the end of something? Now, there's still plenty of reasons to feel awesome about the Phillies going into next year. They have a lot of great players, a lot of great pitchers. They have some prospects that people are excited about that are coming. But man, oh man, I mean, to have that, while this singular moment to end it is going to certainly, stand alone as the highlight. I think people that watch this team, certainly Phillies fans in particular, they know it's the same story. And that's really, really difficult.
I had talked a little bit about how this team had cut down on its chasing so far this October, right? That they had been more disciplined in zone, that the bigger problem was whiffing. Today was not the case. In front of me, I have a list of every single Phillies playoff game over the last 4 years, sorted by chase rate, right? How often are Phillies hitters swigging outside the zone? Shouts out to True Media, which allowed me to do that in 19 seconds while Jordan was talking. And today was the second highest chase rate percentage in this era of Phillies baseball, right? Second highest, behind, I believe this was the game they lost against the Padres in San Diego. I think that was game 1 of the NLCS way back in 2022. And so, yeah, like that's it. I don't really have much else to say. We'll talk about the Dodgers a lot. Like,
I will say though,
I want
to use that. I want to use that stat as just a quick pivot to the Dodgers before we take a break, which is that, and I just saw this, they post this photo after in the celebration of like, here are the guys, here were our NLDS, starters,
Yep.
Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, Ohtani. And none of those guys were there 2 years ago. And you just kind of realize, like, holy crap, this pitching staff. And yes, clearly the bullpen remains a mystery box. But if Roki Sasaki is going to do anything close to this, I think Emmett Sheehan's awesome. I know he gave up a run today. If you got Emmett Sheehan going, I know Kershaw was a disaster, whatever. This is just an unbelievable collection of arms that the Cubs or Brewers are about to have to deal with, let alone the World Series. And how far that this Dodgers team has come. And if it's so funny, you look at the pitchers they were rolling out 2 years ago, the starting staff was nothing special at all, but the bullpen was amazing. This is like Evan Phillips with like a 0.5 ERA and all these guys. Now it's the starters, and they're using them in the bullpen, and that's why they're here, because it's not like the Phillies can't pitch, and the Dodgers pitched that much better. And that is why they are moving on in fairly decisive fashion, as they will not have to go back to Philadelphia. And now they will await their opponent.
Shouts out True Media again. I have all of the Dodgers starts basically of the last 5 years by miss percentage. And I think this is, whiff. And I think this is relevant because you talk about those 4 guys who weren't there last year. If you look at basically like highest whiff rate conjured or, elicited, whatever the word is, by a pitcher, by a starter, of the top 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are this year. right? Like
Yeah.
it's
So
like they're doing things on the mound that they were not doing before.
Yeah. It's funny you said last year. I was about to correct you and say 2 years ago, but you're right. 3 of them weren't there last year because Glasnow was hurt, Snell wasn't on the team, and Ohtani wasn't pitching. Yamamoto was there last year. Of course, he was a huge part of their run last year. But I'm just looking 2 years ago. Just look at that. Just go look at that 2023 pitching staff, and it feels like a lifetime ago. And clearly they've brought these pitchers together. They're finally healthy. And by the way, we got to say, if we're just focusing on this game, and then we'll move on here because Cubs officially have our attention. I'm not wearing my South Bend Cubs hat by accident. Tyler Glasnow, man. I mean, what a performance. Yeah. That was awesome. Like, I know the Phillies, as we mentioned, but like 6 scoreless there, looking pretty awesome. Like that's the guy. And he's always capable of that. But he has been not that consistent really this season or since he got hurt last year. He showed that early in his first Dodgers, run at the beginning of last year before he got injured. But that was a hell of a showing and a reminder that he is also on this team. All right. We'll save more Dodgers thoughts.
I just watched the play again.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, we're going to take a break. Jake's going to take a deep breath. And when we return,
poor guy,
we're going to talk about the Cubs and the Brewers. We'll be right back on Baseball Barbacast. Welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. Let's talk about who the Dodgers will play in the National League Championship Series. And we still do not know the answer because the Chicago Cubs absolutely took it to the Brew Crew here on Thursday evening at Wrigley Field, 6-0. The Cubs once again jump out and score in the first inning. Ian Happ with a humongous 3-run homer off of Freddie Peralta. And I mean, yeah, technically it was. We assumed that the Brewers would maybe fight back here. We had Matthew Boyd on the mound. Of course, his outing did not go well earlier in the series. Boyd goes 4 2/3 scoreless. Palencia, Pomeranz, Keller, Thielbar follow, only allow 2 base runners the rest of the way. Brewers offense was simply asleep. If you were a Brew Crew doubter, hater, whatever, I know Lance Brozdowski's sleeping good tonight. Because if you were watching this Brewers offense, you said that's what you can't do. This is the problem. You can't show up in the postseason if you can't hit the ball over the fence. And the Brewers, they didn't even come anywhere close to hitting the ball over the fence. 1 extra base hit, 3 hits on the evening. And they had a couple, there were a couple moments because they drew some walks where maybe they had something going. But the Cubs were very much in control here. And that 3-run lead held for a while. They add on later. With a couple more homers from Kyle Tucker. That is very important, as Kyle Tucker has not had an extra base hit this postseason until that huge swing late in this game. First homer since, I think, the beginning of September, because he missed most of September. Left on left, just a rocket to center field. That was, there's Kyle Tucker. I haven't seen that swing in a while. That was very impressive. Michael Busch hits 1 as well. So, Cubs forcing a Game 5. Very, very impressive showing from there as they come home and just take care of business, defend their home turf. And so now what we have in this series as we go to a Game 5 is both teams just kind of dominated on their home field, and we go to a Game 5, which is like a pretty standard course of events. Of course, it's not how some of these other series have gone. But, I mean, I guess by that logic and how it's gone, you would still lean towards Milwaukee. But the pitching in this Game 5, which of course has not been announced yet, which we assume would be Shota Imanaga versus... I am imagining the most outs are going to come from Jacob Mizorowski, which is...
If they don't, the Brewers will lose.
You're probably right. Aaron Ashby...
They could lose anyway.
A lot in this series. Yeah, right. I don't know, man. This is now, you got our attention. You know what? I'm glad that this has gone this way because if you've listened this week, I mean, obviously have not been locked in on the series nearly as much, but they're taking center stage on Saturday for the right to go play the Dodgers. And I am now officially just thinking about this. I'm honestly thinking more about the Brewers than the Cubs, right? I mean, I know that they're going to be back at home and maybe they just look like they do in the first 2 games and then they handle business, but I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm starting to sweat here about Milwaukee again. How are you feeling?
similarly, because of how it went down today, right? The biggest critique of this team is that they might not hit for enough power in October, because for whatever John Smoltz may say on the broadcast, home runs win in the playoffs. I could cite any number of study that has taken a look at that. The teams that hit the ball over the fence when the games matter the most win the most often. That's it. That's a fact, right? The Brewers, compared to all the teams in baseball in the playoffs, don't hit that many home runs. And so if there was a way that they were going to get bounced, it was going to look like this. I'm looking at the scorecard, the box score now, right? They got one guy to third base all night, right? And there wasn't really that much traffic. They end up with 3 hits, 4 walks on the evening, 7 base runners. And it's like, in a game 5, if they can get more guys on, maybe they can create more pressure. I know that there's real value to that with the Cubs. But this was a really yucky, gross, uninspired performance from the Brewers offense tonight.
Yeah, and the decision to start Peralta, which, I think makes
let's talk about that. Really interesting. This is really interesting.
So Murph was asked about this, and I mean, this quote is kind of it's not absurd that he was starting. I don't think you're like, what? We're starting Peralta. But he said pregame, we're all in to win it all. In order to have Freddie for sure for 2 times the next series, it was imperative, best available pitcher, let's go. Now, again, whatever. You're focused on winning the game in front of you. That's fine. But to also be thinking about the next series, but now you lose. Peralta obviously loses because you don't score. Peralta wasn't that bad. And now your pitching is just like, what is the path? And I think that's just what I'm thinking about, is what is the path. Now, let's be clear. Am I feeling awesome about Imanaga? No. So it's not like the Cubs have this clear edge, but I at least know what plan A is. And like, Imanaga is a talented pitcher who could go out there and throw 5 or 6 good innings. Like, that's not implausible. Whereas the Brewers, it's just like, I don't even know what the roadmap is. It probably involves a lot of Abner Uribe, like, are they going to ask for 6 outs from him?
Let me hop in. I would have said and did say the same thing about the Toronto Blue Jays before they gave the Yankees a swirly in game 4. I think we are designed to dunk on the bullpen game because it is not interesting, right? I think that it does not hold the same narrative oomph. We want starters to go deep. I think it is one of the more fix-worthy things in the sport is like, we want to incentivize pitchers that work deeper into games for a number of different reasons. However, from an efficacy perspective, bullpen games work often. And why do we know this? Because teams are still doing them. Smart teams are still doing them. If these things didn't work, they wouldn't do them. And a bullpen game in the playoffs is very different than a bullpen game in the regular season. In the regular season, if you do a bullpen game, you're probably not expecting to win that game. You're not going to push your better relievers past their usual amount of innings, right? And so you're trying to make a dollar stretch past where it can't go, and you're just hoping your offense has a good day or balls get hit hard at people, right? In the playoffs, a bullpen game is different because, like, you're going to go to Abner Uribe for 5 outs, right? You're going to have, even like today, John Duran, you're going to let him go get 5 outs. And so that allows you there's more leeway, and therefore it's more, effective. Totally. And so, yes, like, okay, so here's a question. Who do you feel more confident in? Whatever Brewers pitchers are going to throw the first 3 2/3 or 4 1/3 tomorrow, or Shota Imanaga? Because that's really what the conversation is.
Totally. And I think to your point, and let's be clear, they won a bullpen game in game 2. They started Ashby. It didn't work, and they won anyway. Now, that's because they got 3 scoreless from Mizorowski. They got, Chad Patrick and Koenig. Koenig gave them 4 outs, didn't allow a base runner. Uribe, perfect at the end of that one. McGill, good. My concern is that they also did a bullpen game in game 3 unintentionally and exposed some of those pitchers. You had to get 2 innings from Grant Anderson. You had to use more of Chad Patrick. You used Kozik and Quintana goes 3 innings there. I don't know if he's going to be a factor in this one too. I guess that's plausible. Mears, I think, is pitched in every game. So it's going to be under Uribe for sure, because Uribe did not end up pitching in Chicago. So he's clearly a huge part of this. Mizorowski, same thing. I think those are the headliners of this potential game, but that's a lot more outs that you still have to get. Now, to your point, it absolutely could work just as it did in Toronto. But it also just, more opportunities for the chain to break down. And so I think my anxiety about it is because, like, it is such a Brewers thing that if it works and they go to the CS, it's like, of course. And if it doesn't, it will be even more of a like referendum on why they can never win in the playoffs. And that's discourse that I'm sort of dreading. And we will see how we react to it after game 5, either direction. And maybe Mizorowski just throws 6 perfect innings and we're just talking about him. But we don't know what he's built up to. So
the playoffs are so weird, right?
That's just kind of where I'm at.
Not everything is an ultimatum because it's just such a small sample size, but at the same time, it's what we got. And so, like, if the Brewers go out there and like, let's use Aaron Judge as an example. Aaron Judge can't get the job done. It's like, okay, that's silly. The numbers there's so few at bats. It's like, okay, yeah, but those are the at bats. Like, those are the at bats we have. And so I think it's, to me, the question. So let's say like the Cubs win, right? It's less Brewer ball can't get it done in the playoffs, and it's more Brewer ball hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs, right? I don't feel like we can ever be authoritative about it in that way.
That's totally fair. I guess the last thing I would say about just like thinking ahead to the matchups is kind of the righty lefty situation, because the 4 lefties on the Brewers roster are Jose Quintana, who again maybe will be available in sort of this bulk role, and they lean on him. That would not shock me if that's how it plays out. Ashby, who at this point has been bad twice, so I don't really see. Again, it had an awesome season, so maybe they still trust him and they throw him back out there, but that hasn't gone well for him in this series. Robert Gasser, who just got blasted tonight and was essentially the long guy, and then Koenig, who we've seen a little bit of. So because you have these big Cubs bats that are left-handed, like you only, the more I talk about this, like Quintana feels massively important. Like the more I'm looking at this, Quintana and Mizorowski and Uribe is kind of the guys I'm going to be really thinking about going into that game. But I'm excited to lock in on that one. I'm excited to watch every pitch. I mean, I watch almost every pitch of the game tonight, but this is really going to be something. It's a hell of an opportunity for the Brewers, and it's a hell of an opportunity for the Cubs, because they've been kind of bullied by Milwaukee here recently. And this is a real chance to go into Milwaukee and really kind of show them that, like, hey, we're the Cubs. We should be taken seriously again, which we haven't been for multiple seasons.
And part of that is their own fault, the Cubs, because they have not earned that respect. And one of the most interesting storylines about this entire series is that the Brewers are not the underdog. And it doesn't matter how many times Pat Murphy walks out there and goes, no one believes in us. Like, you won the most games in the league this season. The Cubs won fewer games than you. And so the Cubs are going to feel like they are underdogs. And that is this inversion of the just, city dynamic and the dynamic between these two franchises over time. And I just find that whole thing to be very, very interesting. My last point about this game 5 is Jacob Mizorowski. Because the more I think about it, the more it just runs through him. And what a fascinating way for this to pan out, where when they call him up, it's like, all right, let's see if he can help this team. Oh, wow, he could definitely help this team. And then he's the main character of an all-star game by no fault of his own. And then he's like not very good in the second half. In game 2, he looked electric. He was throwing 104. And now the season rests on his ability to effectively not pee his pants. And I'm fascinated to see how it pans out.
Yeah, and he's obviously going to be more well-rested than Quintana, who also threw 3 scoreless innings. But yeah, what does that look like? Miz threw 57 pitches over those 3 innings. He hasn't gone longer than, he last went 5 innings on September 13th, right? So it wouldn't shock me if they just start him. That's not,
yeah,
that would not be hard to believe. I could see them just like maybe going Koenig opener to Miz. That would make some sense with the Cubs lefties at the top, but we'll see. But I agree. Yeah, this is really going to be something with that dude, and if he can channel it, because obviously stuff's about as good as anyone on the planet, and we will see how that manifests. And the Dodgers can sit back and wait, but also, like, they would then be getting to. This is a huge difference between having to go to Milwaukee or having the Cubs come to them. So that is a pretty big deal how that one shakes out. So we will see what happens there.
It is also a big deal because where will I go?
Yes. There's a lot else going on behind the scenes in terms of our respective travel, which we will of course talk about tomorrow. We will at least say that the Phillies losing certainly made things a little bit simpler, but nobody cares about that. All right, let's take a break. When we return, we've got another Game 5 to talk about. We'll be right back on Baseball Barbercast.
They are the second best words in professional sports: game and 5. If you like game, there is an argument that Game 5s are more interesting than Game 7s. Like Game 7s have 2 more games of buildup, right? But Game 5s, it's the stakes are a little higher because if you lose, your season is more embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like if you lose in a Game 7 of an NLCS or in a Game 7 of a World Series, you can go like after you can like hang your hat on that, right? I don't think that the Tigers or the Mariners, if they lose this upcoming ALDS Game 5, are going to be like, you know what? Great year.
It's also a little bit different than the Game 3 in the wild card round, which again has a much shorter history, so we don't really know exactly the precedent for how those teams are remembered. But in those cases, like short series, like who knows? But like losing in a Game 5, it's like you feel like you had the opportunity to prove yourself, and you didn't, and you also didn't even come close to the World Series. So that is a pretty brutal combination of feelings, which of course the Yankees couldn't even get that far. Neither could the Phillies. Whoever ends up losing these 2 Game 5s we have coming up over the next 48 hours, we will see how they feel. But we do have, first up, before we get to Cubs Brewers on Saturday, we will have the Tigers and Mariners on Friday night in Seattle. And we already started to talk about this because we knew about this when we recorded 24 hours ago. But the piece of information that we received since we last recorded is who is going to be starting for the Seattle Mariners, and that is George Kirby, who started Game 1 and was pretty great outside of a home run to Kerry Carpenter where he threw a 96-mile-an-hour pitch 2 inches above the strike zone, and Kerry Carpenter tomahawked it out because he's just an automatic home run against George Kirby, apparently. He's got 5 homers against him in 11 plate appearances. So that is, of course, one of the big storylines for George Kirby coming into this game, because they could have gone with Luis Castillo, who had started Game 2, but also would have been, pretty well rested there. They go with Kirby. I'm not super shocked by this. Could Castillo still factor in relief? Definitely possible. I think that the 2 things that I'm thinking about most, one we already touched on last night, which is just the Dan Wilson versus AJ Hinch. I think that is absolutely something that is going to be fascinating to watch. Although at the same time, Skubal starts are the one start. You can look at this both ways, because on one hand, you could say the Skubal start is the one start where AJ Hinch doesn't have to do any hardcore managing, right? Because he's got Skubal. It's the opposite of like Casey Mize, where he's like, yeah, I don't care, you look good, I'm pulling you. Like, sorry, bud. Skubal, he's going to have a little bit more leash. But now here we are again in a Game 5 in a winner take all, which of course did not go his way last year. And maybe that changes. Maybe if it does get a little dicey and he's facing Jorge Polanco in the 5th with 2 runners on, does Hinch pull the plug, right? That's certainly going to be something interesting. And then for Wilson, it's just the guy who hasn't done this very often and is going to be kind of figuring out where he goes, especially after some of his most trusted relievers, got tagged in this game 4 to kind of force game 5. So that's also something to monitor. But I have more Kirby thoughts, but I'll kick it back to you here before I go in on Mr. Kirby.
Maybe this is why I'm not a big league manager. I would just want to go down with Scoops. For me, it's like if he gives it up, I can sleep
for sure
all winter.
Yeah.
But if Tyler Melton does it, so I can't.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm
Tyler
making a
or
point.
Melton. I know.
I'm making.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And no, Skubal's the main character in this, indisputably, for better or for worse. And I am ecstatic to watch him because he is getting to watch him up close now multiple times over the last few weeks. Like, he's awesome, and I enjoy what he is capable of. All that said, I think Kirby, I mean, this is building up. You think about his season, this is someone who was building up to, I think going into the season was kind of the guy that people thought, this is the best pitcher on the Mariners. I think people were ready to kind of crown him. I think Logan Gilbert and Brian Wu clearly had something to say about that this season. And a lot of that, too, was that Kirby missed the first 2 months with a shoulder injury. That is never what you want to hear about a young, talented pitcher. But he came back and has been, taking the ball every turn through since the end of May. And it's been a weird season because there have been starts where it's like, there he is. That's George Kirby. He did find more strikeouts this year than he did in years past. And that was kind of the question with him because he basically had demonstrated the best command of any starting pitcher in baseball, but he wasn't striking out that many guys. And so he was very kind of susceptible to the home run, to, the BABIP gods not smiling down upon him. And that happened a lot earlier in his career, and it happened a lot even this season, when that's why his ERA is not as sparkling. But I mean, his last few starts in the regular season, it was like, there he is, that's the guy. And he's really good. And Logan Gilbert and Brian Wu have certainly passed him this year, as they've all kind of jockeyed for that top spot in this rotation. But this is, you still got to be feeling pretty good. I mean, he is not a perfect pitcher. He's not like, but if he goes out there and goes 6 scoreless, will anyone be surprised? No. He is a really, really, really good pitcher, and he's pitched in some huge spots. He started that game 3 against the Astros in 22 that ends up going 18 innings. He goes 7 scoreless in that one, closed out the series against Toronto in relief. Like, he's pitched in some pretty big games here, and I know he's facing them for the second time in this series, which is always tough. But I got pretty good amount of confidence in Kirby, I think, in this one, and I think that should make for a hell of a game with him and Skubal.
Who you got?
I don't know, man.
I'll go first.
I'm certainly done picking anything involving. It was the Guardians, but now I guess it's transferred over to the Tigers, where you're watching them on some days and you're just like, this team is not very good. And then they show up, and I certainly can't count them out at this point, because Skubal's always capable of just doing the thing. So I think the Mariners at home are going to be in a good spot, but I don't know, man. This is going to be something. This is going to be something. So I'll be here at home. I'll be writing off the game, however that goes. But I will be doing it from the comfort of my couch, for better or for worse.
I'll be doing it from the comfort of my in-laws' sukkah. I think that Skubal gets it done. When in doubt, go with the biggest dog, and that's this guy.
He is the biggest dog. It is indisputably. Like, this is the redemption arc. The narrative is in his favor, and he was awesome in game 2. He was, but 2 swings that he would like back.
If he goes out there and he carves, he is the best pitcher in the world. He's probably the best pitcher in the world right now, with all due respect to Paul Skeens, who does not have the opportunity to do things like this because his organization is a circus.
Those are the guys. Wheeler, obviously, in a weird spot right now. Those are the guys we're talking about. But I think Skubal's the one you can say it without even feeling bad. Like, he is the one.
This is the best pitcher in the world.
You don't have to clarify it, but I agree that this is an opportunity to, like, really,
and that's, I guess, my point. That's my point. Like, it's been a minute, it feels like, since we had that, right? Since it was like, this is the guy. And I think that if Skubal does it tomorrow, if you are arguing for Crochet or Skeens or Sanchez, like, there are arguments there. But for me, it's like, if it looks like the guy and it smells like the guy, like, it's the guy. And I expect Skubal to be the guy tomorrow.
That is a super duper valid take. So we will see how that goes. As for who the Blue Jays would rather face, I actually don't think they really care that much right now, because I think they're still partying and having a good time, and they know they're going to be home, right? They know they'll be chilling. They don't have to worry about, like, the Dodgers. Oh, are we getting on a plane? Are we hanging out here?
Much rather face the Tigers for one simple reason, and that is because
what we just talked about.
No, well, that is the distance.
Well,
they would rather face the Tigers because the distance
would be the number one reason. But okay,
ball players don't like. They don't want to get on the flight and fly out there. Kidding me?
Okay, sure. That is on the list of reasons you wouldn't want to face the Mariners.
It's far. You know where Seattle is?
I will say, though, like, again, if we are zooming farther out, Skubal not being available for Game 1 is a huge deal. Maybe only be like, that is massively important. So, as we just saw in the previous series, so we will see what that does for the Blue Jays, but we will cross that road when we get there. So our next pod will not come until, I guess, after Game 1. I believe is the plan as things stand. So we will talk to you all next week. Enjoy these Game 5s. Thank you to Andrew Hartz and Ingrid Rosas for staying up late and producing these postseason pods. We appreciate it. You can email us at baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. We appreciate the support. We hope you enjoy us talking late into the evening about the ball. We're having a good time and excited to get back. Excited to be home for now. Take a deep breath. Watch some games on TV. Get back out there very soon, and then the grind really begins. The travel will soon really start to pick up here, and we are very fortunate to do so. Jake Mintz, final words before we go to sleep.
Hug a Phillies fan.